This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com. Virginia hospitals and health systems provide jobs. They support our economy and promote public health. Local hospitals are always open to help people with unexpected health needs. Having a stable healthcare network is vital. Virginia hospitals are our lifeline.
It's amazing what my students with special needs can accomplish. Their pride is priceless. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Colonel Steve Pike, the head of Capitol Police, the oldest law enforcement agency in not just the Commonwealth, I believe the entire country. And we want to talk about lots of things, but particularly to talk about Capitol Police.
Yes,
because people who visit the area come to the Capitol area, they recognize Capitol Police, but they may not know unless they look at what's on your shoulder that you're separate from local law enforcement or state police. So, how did Capitol Police ever get started?
Well, David, thank you for having me here today. And our history is so rich. We trace our law enforcement roots back to Jamestown in 1618. And that's where Capitol Police began, as it was called at the time, the Public Guard.
Public Guard.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And there was a group of men that were there to guard the governor back in 1618. And so that's kind of the infancy start of Capitol Police. And as the capitals moved from Jamestown, we went with the legislative branch of government, which came into place in 1619, and we're not too far away from that celebration here in the Commonwealth. And then once we got to Williamsburg, then the capital, as we know today, was moved here to Richmond. And along about in the late 1880s, the actual term Capitol Police was enacted legislatively, and we've been here ever since. So it's a lot of rich history here with our agency.
You know, one of the things that particularly for those of us around Capitol Square, and I think it'll interest our viewers as well, is that while the start was in the guarding of the governor, that as it's changed through the years, really Capitol Police is a legislative branch agency. So it's not that you have nothing to do with the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, or the executive branch officials, but really both your employment and the Capitol Police come under the General Assembly.
Yes, sir. And we have a very unique mission here at the Capitol. We are the only legislative law enforcement agency here in the Commonwealth, but we also serve the executive branch, the judicial branch as well. So we provide our public safety services to the governor and his staff, the Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, and also the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals to Virginia. So we have a very important public safety mission here at the seat of government, and we provide these services outside the legislative branch. We stay obviously very busy during the General Assembly, period.
We had former Delegate Pete Geeson, who served back in the 1960s, the 1990s, on the show, and Delegate Geeson was talking about how Senator Willey from Richmond and others, that they were looking at the time back when all these buildings that surround Capitol Square, even this building that we're in today, that's still the General Assembly building, were private buildings. And he said Senator Willey headed up an ad hoc group called the Building Committee, in which whenever a building would become available for sale, he'd get them together and saying, boys,
Right.
as they were all men at that time, we need to buy this building and for the state. So the area that Capitol Police really patrol and serve is much sense larger now than it was even a generation ago.
It is, and we have our primary footprint is around the Capitol and the surrounding buildings, but we actually go out further into the city, and we have a great working relationship with the Richmond Police Department. We have a memorandum of understanding and an expanded jurisdiction because we also provide our public safety services to the Virginia War Memorial, and we go as far out as Washington Redskins training camp to some of the state facilities out in that part of the city. So our footprint has grown over the years, and we service many of the various state agencies here in the city of Richmond.
How many officers?
Well, currently we authorize 77 sworn officers. We were extremely fortunate with some hard work with the legislative session this year, and we got some additional positions that we need to keep fulfilling our mission. And so we're probably, as a standalone Capitol Police Agency, fairly large as you compare it across the United States.
Now, City of Richmond, I believe, may still have some horses. I'm not sure, but here on Capitol Police, I see bicycles at times being used.
Yes, we have several of our officers are trained as bicycle officers, patrolmen, and we are very successful with using that resource. It allows us to get into areas very quickly. It's a quiet mode of transportation. And as you mentioned, the horses, one of the future projects that I hope comes through fruition for us is a partnership with Richmond Police Department and having the first ever mounted unit here at the Capitol.
Yes.
And so we're very excited to see that progress, and we're in talks with the city to get that put in place. And I know they're working to relocate their current facility for their horses, but I think that would provide another great public safety tool for us here in the Capitol complex to do our job.
Yeah, I would think that beyond just the way that visitors and tourists would be excited, that it also probably for crowd control and for other things that could happen just to have ones mounted on horses.
Yes, the mounting unit is a very good resource for crowd control. They're also very beneficial for large groups, ceremonies, large events. And so I think it would provide a good advantage for us to have those in place when we get to that point. And we're looking very fortunate that we're in a position to do that. And I'd reached out to the Senate and the House of Delegates, and I'm not going to reveal those names yet, but I had them actually choose what will be the first name for each horse representing the Senate of Virginia and the House of Delegates. So I think when we seal the deal with the city, and we'll release the names, and I think they're going to be it's going to be very exciting.
Oh, that will be.
Yes,
that will be. Now, there are times when there are special guests visiting dignitaries. I would imagine that really increases the workload of your officers.
In the last probably 6, 8, 10 years, we've seen a lot of large events. We had to visit with the Queen. Here we've had the movie Lincoln.
Yes.
We've had other large American Idol. We've had other large events, and when those occur, it definitely creates an opportunity for us to be on the forefront with our security and work very hard to make sure we provide good services when those events are occurring. I will say this past session, we saw record numbers of people coming to the General Assembly, and I think we've seen that kind of across the entire United States. People are very passionate about issues, and they are more compelled to come to their seat of government to redress their members. And I think in our position, we work very hard to maintain a balance because we respect the right to free speech. And so we work very hard in trying to maintain that balance in the complex. With most of the buildings are working government buildings, but allowing people to come and freely express their opinions towards any issue.
Now, this past session, I know the numbers, I think, just skyrocketed, it appears, and I know practically every day, toward the end of the day, I'd stop by and speak to Officer Sparks, Sparky as we
Right.
going to call her, and say, okay, Sparky, how many were here today? Was it a new record? Do you have some numbers that stand out for you about because it was the shorter session.
Correct.
It was not the full 60 days.
Right.
It was 2 weeks less.
Right. Yeah, we saw record numbers. Probably in the 45-day window, it was in excess of 100,000 people coming in and out of the General Assembly building. So that was the total pedestrian count that came in and during that window. So it was record numbers. We noticed that many of the committee rooms were full. We saw a lot of people very passionate about many of the legislative bills that were put forth. We saw those same kind of numbers in the Capitol. We have a lot of people that like to visit and go in the mezzanines or the House and Senate chambers to kind of watch how that process works. So, and I think we see a larger interest in school groups now. A lot of school groups continue to come to the Capitol during session, and I think that's very good for our youth to be able to understand the legislative process, how laws kind of go through the debate process, and then ultimately make it to the floor and voted on. And so it's good to see folks come out during the session and take an interest in their government.
You know, our viewers outside of the Capitol area, or ones that aren't here, may not understand unless I say a few more words about this General Assembly building we're in, because it will be closed shortly. And then I understand there's some kind of a tag sale that's going to happen in the summer, but then it'll be completely shuttered, and then starting the process of removing asbestos in the building coming down. The effect that has on Capitol Police is that the General Assembly offices and most of the committee rooms and most of the agencies that are in this building now will be in a slightly smaller building on the south side of Capitol Square that was renamed years ago as the Pocahontas building.
Yes.
What are some of the extra challenges that you all already are starting to address and figure you'll have to address with visitors being in that site and the Capitol with this building being gone?
Well, David, going back to the numbers that we saw, it was very important to try to capture as best as we could the volume of people coming in the General Assembly building. Because when you look at the Pocahontas building, it sits pretty much on a block with an adjacent hotel property. So it's kind of an island of itself. So when you look at that number, we realize people have to cross many streets to try to get to the new General Assembly during this 4 to 5 year temporary window. So as we transition to the new building, as we speak, there are many operational challenges because we're staffing additional buildings, putting additional security measures in, and then probably more importantly, knowing that volume of people will move from the Pocahontas to the Capitol during the next session, which comes in January, along with inauguration that's coming up too, which adds another kind of component. We put some language in this session through the budget process to allow us to work with the Department of General Services to kind of create a pedestrian plaza on Bank Street, because when you have that volume of people moving between the buildings across the street, it definitely becomes a safety concern. And as we know, we have many school groups and so forth, so we want to make sure that we have that properly established in a safe and secure area for the people to move between the buildings. So there will definitely be some operational changes coming up, and I think some of what we plan to try to do may have to get modified as we move through this. So we know this first session may be more of a challenge, but I think the following sessions we can work the bugs out.
You know, and talking about the number of people that came into this building on some of those days, and I don't know if I ever saw the longest lines, there were lines outside that probably were as long as a football field, of people maybe standing 2 by 2, not all in a single line, waiting to get in. And so when you envision having something comparable to that winding around the public interest to the Pocahontas building, while it will be closer to the school buses that park down there on Bank Street or wherever, it will definitely be a new challenge for the time period which, as you said, could go beyond the 4 years, could go to 5.
Correct.
New buildings, demolition of this building and a new building doesn't always stay right on the schedule that they hope.
You're absolutely correct. And I think one of the opportunities we have moving to the Pocahontas is with the north and the south side of the building, I think we'll be able to kind of separate some of the population trying to enter the building and reduce those lines. That's our goal, to try to get people in as quickly as possible through our security measures so they can get to their representatives to have their meetings.
And for our viewers who are seeing this and are trying to visualize it on their own, when they would have groups here meeting with legislators and then going to the Capitol, then it would be simply crossing Bank Street and going in the visitor's entrance, because now in some of the bad weather, or I should say rainy or snowy weather that we have during the session, people leave this building, walk way down to the south side of the Capitol to come back up through the visitor's entrance. So that one part will be slightly easier for the public.
Absolutely.
To get from one building to the other.
And we're looking at different options as far as even the possibility of allowing the future tours next year and the following years to even access the west entrance, and kind of changing around some of the operational things. So a lot of that's in the early stages and in discussion with the House and Senate and the general services, and how we just kind of work operationally through these changes. So what may work the first session, we may change for the following years.
I wonder what got you interested in Capitol Police. As a native of Wythe County and having worked in game and inland fisheries and your long experience in law enforcement, what led you to this post, the Capitol Police?
Yeah, very interesting, the history here at the Capitol Police, and opportunity. Back in 2010, there was the assistant chief's position was open, and I had applied and always had been kind of intrigued with the Capitol Police and the history, and so that's almost 7 years this December, and so it's been a wonderful opportunity to grow up in a rural part of the state, and being in the military, and then working for the game and inland fisheries, and then coming to the Capitol Police. And I've had many opportunities working across the state and here at the Capitol, meet so many wonderful people, citizens of the Commonwealth, people across the country, and even different countries that come to visit. And I find it very rewarding, oftentimes when I walk through the Capitol complex like I did today, coming here to meet you, to take time and stop and speak with people. And it's just, it's a lot of fun, and a lot of very interesting folks you have the opportunity to have a dialogue with.
You know, I think the answer you just gave is probably a similar one that many of your officers would give, because while there's always transition and while there's always retirements that come about, many of the Capitol Police that serve with you, under you, are ones that have been here a decade or 2 decades.
We have a lot of experience here at the Capitol Police, and just a little bit of a history. In 1889, there was a captain that was sworn in as the chief of Capitol Police, and it's really hard to kind of put your arms around this statistic, but he stayed in as the chief till 1948.
Wait a minute, tell me the years again.
Yeah, 1889 to 1948. So as you mentioned earlier,
Almost 60 years.
yeah, in 2018 is our 400th anniversary.
Yes.
And we've worked very closely with VCU, with their history department, and we've been using interns and working with us, and they've been going to the Library of Virginia and mining out a lot of great historical information that we hope to put together in some displays for folks who come to the Capitol in 2018 to see a little bit more, read a little bit more about Capitol Police. But through that process, Captain Powell Pettis, who was the chief at the time, I think he served probably 16 governors. And so we actually have an interview that he did with a local radio station in 1953. We're actually able to get a copy of that. So part of that display that we do next year, we want to be able to play that interview and have folks be able to hear some of the stories he was able to explain and share during his interview.
Well, we'll have to, when we get the studio relocated to the Pocahontas building, we'd love to have you come back on and play a portion of that as a teaser, and then they'd get the entire part at some other place. But that's interesting. And so in the history it's being done, have they yet uncovered what number are you as the...
Well, we're still working on, as you know, a lot of the records from Jamestown, Williamsburg through many fires where a lot of that was lost. So one of the things we're trying to determine is who were the chiefs of the public guard and now the Capitol Police through as many years, because we would like to definitely recognize the men and women who served in those positions.
Well, I've noticed over the years a little bit of teasing between the attorney generals and the governors, because the attorney generals, they say, I'm number so-and-so, and their number is much smaller than the number of governors because of multiple terms that some attorney generals have served. And so it's very likely that your number, if they are able to come up with one, will be as low as some of the attorney generals and lower than the number of governors that we've had in the Commonwealth.
I would imagine it would be a fairly low number.
Particularly with that one having served almost 60 years.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Very, very incredible.
That is amazing. He liked his job so much he didn't want to retire.
Absolutely, yes, he did. And to think, when we were looking over the material to see someone that was here post Civil War, World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, and to see the many changes of this Capitol during that time frame through those many years had to be remarkable.
And I would think, again, as I picture that in my mind, the transition during that time would have to do also with race and gender among Capitol Police, that at one time all white men.
Yes.
And then the change that's taken place where it's almost more of a cross-section of the Commonwealth.
I would agree, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So as you look forward on into what's coming in 2017, what's the biggest challenge that you see that you and your Capitol Police will be facing?
Well, I think, we went through a period of time where we, as many law enforcement agencies in the Commonwealth, experienced a shortage in officers. And I think that's happened across the country. And, we worked very hard again with the House and Senate. We were able to increase the starting pay for our department. And so we look forward to getting more of those vacancies filled. I think some of the continued challenges for us will always be to make sure that we provide a fair and balanced place for the public to come and redress their government. And that's very important to me as a police chief here, is making sure that we treat every group, every person as fairly as possible within the rules that are already established, so they feel comfortable in being here, expressing the First Amendment.
Colonel Pike, we thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond. We thank you for the service that you provide to the citizens of the Commonwealth as well as those who work in the site. And we look forward to celebrating with you the 400-year history and look forward to that transition down to the Pocahontas building. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Pike in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community. For jobs, the economy, and public health, Virginia Hospitals, our lifeline.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.